Hello, everyone. First of all, let me start by saying that you guys are my favorite people who skipped lunch to come to my session. We were just joking that we made this title of this session so long that probably half of you are confused what this is about. Today we are going to talk about two things. The title does not do justice to what we are going to talk about. So we are going to talk about briefly about the functionalities that exist in Compliance Manager that we released last year. And we are going to talk about controls that you can apply to your organization to manage privileged access to meet your compliance and security obligations. My name is Abhishek. I'm a program manager in Microsoft 365 Core Security team. I spend my time building features which go into making sure our data center is secure and compliant, as well as few features that are customer-facing, which you can use to meet your compliance and security needs. Out of this session, my hope is that you would get a brief overview of Compliance Manager, understand what the needs that it meets, and how it can help you in your compliance journey. We'll give you a brief overview of how as Microsoft, we manage access in our data center that meets certain regulations of compliance that we will talk about as well. And then we will touch upon the concept of zero standing access, which we use internally, and how we have built into the products that you can now start using in your organization to get to the same security rigor as we take for our own data center. So to start our discussion off, right? Data is really the center of everything that we do, whether it is data which we store in our data centers, whether it is our corporate data, whether it is our customer data, whether it is data that you store on your on-prem installations, on your devices, on your services and stuff. It is really, really exploding. And with explosion of data, the requirement or the need to keep it secure and to make sure that all the compliance requirements are met with all the data that we are creating and we are storing, with new compliance regulations coming up, popping up like mushrooms every now and then. It's really hard to understand all the requirements and make sure that our systems, our organizations are compliant from the beginning and they stay compliant throughout. From the perspective of our data center at Microsoft, when we take care of managing your data that is stored in Microsoft Cloud, we build all our features, all our compliance and security requirements for our data center based on these four pillars: security, privacy, transparency, and compliance. So we ensure our data center is secure. We ensure your data that is stored in our data center is secure. We ensure the privacy regulations, the privacy requirements are enforced. We ensure that there is full transparency on how we keep our data center secure, how we keep your data secure, and how we can allow you to enable you with controls that you can apply into your organization to keep it secure and compliant. And of course, compliance. I mean, compliance is needless to say, it's more tangible than security. Security is not very tangible for for organizations. It's only tangible when something bad happens. But compliance is really tangible. You know that if you do not meet certain regulations, it is going to affect your organization both financially and in terms of the reputation. So Microsoft Cloud comes with built-in compliance. So when you bring your service from an on-prem installation to Microsoft Cloud, you get compliance features built in for free. It has features that allows you to assess, which gives you insight on what things you have, what data systems in place to classify data, what you have and how it is stored. It allows you to protect. So Microsoft takes care of a lot of requirements of keeping your data secure, and it gives you, it provides tools that you can enable certain controls in the organization to keep it secure as well. And then to respond, so to effectively respond in the case of an incident, whether it is a privacy incident, whether it is a security incident, to respond, to get that understanding of full 360 picture of how your data is stored, what controls were in place, and what exactly happened. That is something that Microsoft Cloud enables you to do. So now, Microsoft works with customers. Now, compliance and security is a shared responsibility. And there is one thing that we need to understand when you move to the cloud. There is a lot of functionalities that you can get out of the box because the cloud, Microsoft Cloud, works to ensure that there are certain regulations for privacy and compliance that are met by our data center itself. However, there is a little bit of responsibility on the customer side, where among the plethora of controls that exist today to make sure your data remains secure, there are certain things that the organization is responsible for taking care of. So, for example, enabling multi-factor authentication or enabling just-in-time access for your organization. However, when you move to, so this is a comparison that shows the responsibility, how it shifts when you move to an on-prem system model to a software as a service model. The responsibility of the cloud provider really increases. And so when you use Office 365, for example, or Azure, or Dynamics from Microsoft Cloud, these are examples of software as a service. When you use that, a significant portion of controls that are required for security and compliance, they are covered by Microsoft Cloud. So the moment you move from on-prem to Microsoft Cloud offering, you get four-fifths or over 75 to 80% of requirements covered. And we will take a quick look at an example that shows how it is possible. This is an example of a security and compliance requirement document standard from NIST. This is an organization in the US which lays down recommendations for an organization to manage security, manage controls that enable security and compliance within an organization. And in its current specification, Microsoft covers 79% of controls that are specified in NIST. And it provides organizations with the tools that you can enable to cover the rest 21%. So the controls are spread over multiple areas, like access to production environment, personal control, or how you protect your data, how access to production environment is managed and stuff. And we provide a significant set of controls that meet all these requirements. So Compliance Manager, as I was talking earlier, Compliance Manager is the service. Before we go there, how many of you have heard about or looked at Secure Score? Great, almost everyone knows about Secure Score. So Secure Score basically gives organizations points to enable certain controls that take the organization to a better security posture. So we took that idea and we applied to compliance. So if we can do it for security, we can do it for compliance as well. So we came up with Compliance Score, and Compliance Manager is where you can see all the controls that exist for your organization. And you can see the compliance score, which basically ties in with the amount of risk that you're offsetting by enabling a certain control. So Compliance Manager is similar to, on the same principles of Secure Score. It is built as an ongoing risk assessment tool. It gives you actionable insights. So it shows you how many points you have for a specific control that could lead to meeting GDPR regulations, or that could lead to meeting HIPAA regulations and whatnot. And then it simplifies compliance. So basically, it tells you what you have already done, and it encourages you to do more to reach a higher compliance score. built on the same principles with SecureScore, we want our organizations, our customers, to make their organizations more secure and more compliant to certain regulations. Compliance Manager today covers various controls that apply to Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics. And there are controls that can accrue to all the requirements in these organizations that these standard bodies, they specify that they need both the cloud provider as well as the customer to implement in their organization. So with that, we will take a very quick run through of Compliance Manager, what its features are, and how you go about assessing the controls that are already in place, and then going about implementing new ones that you don't yet have. So this is the Compliance Manager dashboard. And Compliance Manager is not tied to a SKU. If you have an Office 365 license, you can go today, check it out, and you can see Compliance Manager working for your organization. You will be able to see the controls that are implemented, the compliance score that your organization receives based on the controls that have been implemented. One thing to note here is it clearly calls out the actions that Microsoft has taken and the actions that the customers could take to meet compliance requirements. So as I mentioned, there are almost 80%, 70 to 80% of controls that Microsoft Cloud already covers for you, which is very evident from this dashboard that if you look at GDPR, Microsoft covers 48 actions. If you look at NIST, it covers 760 requirements of that, right? So there are a lot of controls that you get out of the box by moving to Microsoft Cloud. So to create a new assessment, what you can do is you can go ahead and click on Add Assessment. You can create a new group, or you can use an existing group if you so choose. And then you can basically select all the options that you want, the implementation details, test plans, and management workflows. And once you create that, so I'm going ahead and creating one for HIPAA. You can select from the drop-down other requirements like GDPR, NIST, and etc. So once I do add to dashboard, it quickly gives me a rundown of all the requirements that HIPAA wants and how many of them are implemented by Microsoft and how many of them are required for a customer to go ahead and implement. So going back to GDPR, we are looking at now the details of the controls that are required for GDPR. If you see, we also in our spirit of being truly transparent, we show what cloud services does this apply to. So for GDPR specifically, we have done significant effort across Microsoft Cloud to make sure that all our services are compliant. So for any compliance regulatory assessment group that exists in Compliance Manager, you can see all the services that are in scope for that. You can see all the Microsoft managed controls that they exist. You can see the details. So for example, security, what policies exist for information, for controlling information transfer across Microsoft Cloud. You can see the details on how exactly Microsoft has implemented these technologies, our claims, and you can check out the relevant certifications that we have based on that, because all these processes goes through significant audit, periodic audits for Microsoft Cloud. And you can also see the test plan details, wherein we describe how we validate and customers can validate this as well. So there is significant amount of information that exists here, which gives you a picture of how Microsoft Cloud actually has went ahead and implemented few of these controls. So going forward, if we keep going, there are options for customer managed controls as well. So it gives you details about the controls that you can go ahead and enable in your organization, what these controls are, how you can create a test plan, and how you can ensure that these controls are in place and regularly tested within your organization. For example, securing application services on public network. One of the controls this can be met by enabling Office 365 message encryption. So not only do we describe exactly what this control is about, and we also show you instructions on how you can go and turn on certain features in Office 365 to meet this control. So once, and we get you relevant articles that you can refer to go ahead and enable these controls as well. So let's take an example of one single control. Compliance Manager allows you to, now, not everyone is, if I'm an administrator who is reviewing the compliance state of my organization, I'm not the person usually implementing certain controls or verifying if things are working or not. So Compliance Manager makes it really easy to get that workflow going. So if I'm a compliance officer and I'm looking through all the compliance requirement that my organization needs, I can go ahead and assign tasks to people who would then be responsible to go ahead and implement these controls. So for example, here, I'm going to assign it to Alan, and Alan would receive notification about an assignment, and he would know what he needs to do. So he can go back to Compliance Manager. He can read about all the details that apply to securing application services on public network. And he can read the requirements. He can read the test plan on what is required. And he could go ahead and, so in this instance, he's creating an SOP for how things were implemented in the organization and how it can be tested later on. And so this step can vary based on what actions are being taken. In this particular scenario, he went ahead and implemented the control, and then as evidence of that control, he's uploading an SOP to ensure that the person who is now testing it, he can follow the SOP to ensure all the controls are actually in place. And then he could go ahead, mark the implementation state as implemented, and mark the implementation date. And after that, he could go ahead and change the assignment to the person who is responsible to go ahead and test it. Once he does that, the other person will receive notification about that as well, and they could follow the SOP to test it to ensure that all the claims for this control have been met, and once the person tests it and says that it is tested, and he marks the test date, the compliance score, which is 8 in this case, will get added to the overall compliance score for the organization. So I don't know if you recall, we started with 241 and 43, and we end up with 251 after that control was implemented and tested. So beyond that, initially we talked about evidence as well. Now, for example, if you are required to provide evidence of how you meet all the GDPR requirements in your organization, you could come to Compliance Manager. You can export all the details right from here, which will create an Excel spreadsheet that details exactly what controls exist in your organization and what level of compliance do you have for each of these assessment buckets. So this is an example for GDPR where I exported, and then I end up with an Excel sheet which lists all the controls in that organization. Here is a success story, very true to true to here. We have Abrona using Compliance Manager to meet compliance regulations, and this is a quote: "Today we assure our board of directors that we are taking all required steps to deploy highly secure and compliant Office 365 solution." And this is facilitated by the clear and transparent view that Compliance Manager gives across Office 365 that gives a clear picture of the compliance standing for an organization overall. And to end it all, I will play a really nice video, which does not have audio working.
Zorgen we dagelijks voor. De zorginstelling loopt, nou ja, laat ik het zeggen, best achter qua technologie. Dus dan moet er ook in alles gaan voldoen aan de privacy.
En wij geloven in de tools die Microsoft aanbiedt, dat die het verschil kunnen maken.
Healthcare organizations by default care for the most vulnerable people in the society. And they want to do this with this real deep respect for their privacy. So GDPR helps them respect this.
We use technologies like Windows 10, Office 365. We secure the workspace so people are able to collaborate in a secure and safe way with enterprise mobility. Abrona is een zorgorganisatie. Wil maximale zorg en focus op cliënt hebben. Daar past Microsoft 365 technologie uitstekend bij.
Now switching gears, we talked about Compliance Manager. One of the controls that you might have noticed in the screenshot was about, which Microsoft manages, was about securing the data center. So the question is, how does Microsoft approach privileged access to customer data? Now, your data exists in our data center. It's on the machines in our data center. So how do we ensure that it stays secure, stays compliant, and covers all the requirements of all the regulations that we have in place? And the answer to that is zero standing access. And by zero standing access, it's not a concept to me. It's really a principle. It's not a technology. It's not one single technology that enables Microsoft to keep our data secure. It's the principle of zero standing access, where nobody in Microsoft, and I repeat, no one, has access to the data center or the data which is stored in the data center all the time by default. And by that, what I mean is, like, as an engineer, of course, I need to deploy my service. As an engineer, of course, I need to debug services. And in some rare cases, I would need to touch customer data. But what we have in our data center is a system that removes that standing access. Nobody has access by default. What we do allow is engineers to go through an approval system wherein all the access that an engineer needs to perform, or what he needs to perform, where he needs to perform, everything is documented. It is presented to an approver. The approver is usually a manager who can review it, who can understand what access is happening, what is the risk associated with it, and based on all those information, they can approve or deny it. So all Microsoft accesses, even if we change one single configuration in one single machine in our data center, we have to go through this process. And all our processes are highly automated. So we don't have to log into a machine to, for example, get logs or read system log data, or we don't have to log into machine to restart it, for example. So we have our systems highly automated, where we have abstracted interfaces where what the engineers work with, and we issue commands that internally trigger a restart of a machine, or they can download system logs redacted with PII redacted system logs that can be used for investigations and stuff. And not only this, we extend that approval mechanism even to our customers. So in the rarest of the rare cases where we need to access customer data. So for example, let's say a customer is having trouble with their email delivery, and we have to investigate what's wrong with that. So we may need to look at certain email headers on what is actually going on when the email is going from one place to another. Now those things are customer data, and we cannot access it by default. We cannot access it even with manager approval because of this feature, Customer Lockbox. So not just a Microsoft manager approval, an engineer would actually need approval from customer to go ahead and look at that data. And usually these types of accesses, in almost all cases, these type of accesses are happening only for resolving customer issues. So we already have customers engaged. They made a support request, and then engineers decided that we would need to look at email headers or document metadata and whatnot. And they would then issue a request. The customers, the request will have details about the support ticket that was raised, and the customers can then make a decision of whether to allow this or not. So overall, Microsoft Cloud provides really tight control on who gets access to our data center and what form of that access exists. And also, all the access that engineers receive, they're all time-bound. So they're all just in time. So we get access only when we need it, and the access is limited by a time duration. So any engineers can get up to a maximum of 8 hours of access for anything, and access to customer data is limited to at the maximum of 4 hours. So too many click-throughs in this slide. Okay, so there is a significant rigor in Microsoft Cloud, right? So what are the benefits? There is an access control workflow that defines who gets access, when they get access, and to what they are getting access. All of these go through significant audit reviews, and they form the base of all the audit requirements and the compliance requirements that you previously saw. A bunch of controls are satisfied by automating our access of data center. And as I was saying earlier, we have almost everything, 95% of all the operations that we do in our data center, they are automated. So if we have to restart a machine, if we have to kick off a deployment, if we have to read logs, if we have to even get email headers, everything is automated. And if you can see, if we consider all our data center operations as this big circle, that's the little white circle that actually requires manual intervention. So for example, I'll give you one example where we actually have to touch the physical machine directly, which is at the time of network outage. So for example, a machine is not responding to network, then we would have to call in SecOps, and they would actually go ahead, fix the physical machine, whatever issue in the network exists, and then beyond that, there is nothing else. If there is just a network setting that needs to be updated, we have automation for that. If we have to, again, reboot machines, deployment, everything, we have automation for that. And then even fewer operations require access to customer data. So reading email or resetting someone's mailbox, restoring someone's mailbox from a backup in case of an outage. Only those require access to customer data, and all those access go through Customer Lockbox, and customers have an option to approve or deny such requests. We'll do a quick run through of the Customer Lockbox process, how it happens, and where customers are involved. So Customer Lockbox process can be outlined as this. So it starts from customer. They reach out to Microsoft support for a problem that they are facing. Microsoft service engineer support team reaches out to Microsoft engineering team if they can figure out from their standard SOPs. We look at the issue, we determine that, okay, we would need to get access to customer data. We trigger a request for access to customer data. Microsoft Manager approves it. Customer gets the request. They go and approve it. They verify that relevant details are there, and they can go ahead and approve it. And once the approval is done, then Microsoft gets, engineers get access to customer data. So here is an example. Let's say customers made a request. And finally, Microsoft engineer decided we needed access. What we can do is we go ahead and we kick off a request. So we request for access to customer data role. We specify tenant, we specify the reason, and we specify the duration on how long we want that access for. Once that, and again, all engineer access to this system is also two-factor authenticated, so we have significant security built in within our data center operation infrastructure as well. So once that is done, the request is assured, it goes to a manager for approval. The Microsoft manager receives an email which lays down the details of what access is requested, and they can go to the OSP system that we have, and they can review the request and approve it. Once that is approved, the customer receives the request. Again, in a similar email which has some information included. It has the service request number, and it has the details of how long the access is requested. And we also specify the tenant, so the customer is aware which tenant they are requesting access for. Many of our customers have multiple tenants for multiple of subsidiaries that they have. So this clearly calls out which tenant the request is for. The customers can go to the admin center, they see the customer lockbox request, and they can go ahead and approve or deny it. Once they approve the request, Microsoft engineer then receives a notification saying that their access was approved and their elevation is now successful, and they can go ahead and perform the actions that they needed to perform. And this is an example. We did get command new mailbox restore request. So the engineer is trying to restore someone's mailbox, and this command initially was not available to the engineer. And now with the when the approval is granted from customer, they can get access to this command. And once the engineer says the issue is resolved, service request is closed, and customer is happy, and we have met all our compliance requirements. New capabilities in Customer Lockbox. This was announced last year. So we have included a special role for Customer Lockbox where approvers need not be global administrators, which was the case previously. They can be assigned a Customer Lockbox access approver role, which grants them ability to approve Customer Lockbox requests and no other admin privileges. We also included the nationality of the requester. So for example, if the Microsoft engineer is a US national, and it includes the details in there, which was requested by multiple of our customers. This is, again, another success story from one of our customers. Their Customer Lockbox recently has become a big compliance and security control for multiple of our customers who want this ability to have an insight of when and why privileged access is happening to their data, which is stored with Microsoft Cloud. And we are the only providers of such a feature today. We had one of our competitors announce a similar feature very recently, but it is not as comprehensive or provides significant control for customers as we do in Microsoft Cloud. So with that, we have controls for managing privileged access within Microsoft. So how do customers get the same level of controls, right? So before we go into the solution, let's talk about an example of a simple threat that exists today. And this is a security risk. If you have Any person in your organization with privileged administrative access, this threat exists in your organization. So if I'm an Exchange admin in Office 365, I can go and set a journaling rule, which is a very handy tool if you really want to create a backup of your email account. But I can actually go ahead and create journaling rule for any organization, any individual in the organization. And that would actually start journaling all the email that that person is receiving without the person actually knowing about it. So, and this is just one example, really benign, really targeted to one specific user. There are many such tasks and privileges that come with administrator accounts in Office 365 and beyond that create security risks. And these are silent risks because by the time you would discover that something like this has happened, it would be really too late. So something like journaling rule, by the time you would discover all the emails have really valuable emails have been siphoned and really misused. So threats around privileged admin accounts really are really a big issue today. And it is not just for an insider threat. It is also about external threat actors who spearfish. If they know about administrators in your organization, they would launch targeted phishing attacks to compromise their accounts. And then once administrative accounts are compromised, the keys to the kingdom are gone. So basically, they can misuse it to compromise your systems, to exfiltrate data, to spread large-scale infrastructure damage. And before you can, start controlling it, the damage will be already done. One of the stats that I have from 2017 is that around 70 to 80% of attacks that happened over the past year, they started off from a compromised privileged admin account. So either it was an inside job or an administrative account was compromised by an external actor and was misused to gain further access to the organization. So it's really, really significant, super important to make sure that the privileged accounts are secure and privileged access is really controlled. So the solution for our customers, just as we do for our own data center and our own organization, for our customers, the solution is move to a zero-standing model. So let's say if your privileged accounts did not have privileges by default, and they had to go through hoops to get those privileges, once those privileged accounts are compromised, you are really not compromising the keys to the kingdom. You're compromising one key, but it would need multiple other keys to actually do any damage. So privileged access management in Office 365 provides you with just-in-time access. So access only when you need it and not beyond. It is time-scoped. So if you need access for 4 hours, you get approved for 4 hours. After 4 hours, the access will go away again. Granular task-scoped access, so the concept of GIA, just enough access. So if you really, really wanted to restore someone's mailbox if someone has an error in their mailboxes, you don't really need a global admin permission or an Exchange admin permission. If you really had access to just one single command of restore mailbox, you should be able to perform your job. So PAM in Office 365 actually allows you to scope the access down to really one single task. And then it is accompanied with a privileged admin workflow. So, which means that whenever access is required, users would need to go through an additional approval before they can get that access. And then it is audit ready. So in anything that is requested for, all the approvals granted and all the access that happens after that, they are all logged and available for audit. So detections can be built, remediations can be built based on the events that are triggered in audit logs. And we have really two features that enable the concept of privileged access management in Office 365. There is privileged access management in Office 365 feature itself, and there is privileged identity management in Azure AD. And these two features, they together provide a customizable set of controls that you can apply at different levels, at different scopes, to manage privileged access just in time. Privileged identity management in Azure AD, it provides just-in-time access to directory roles, the privileged roles that are exposed in Azure Active Directory. And PAM in Office 365, it provides JIT access to high privileged tasks that exist in workloads and other workload-specific roles which are not exposed in Azure Active Directory. And both these features combined based on the security posture that an organization wants, they can be customized to grant higher privileges to users with high trust and really scoped lower privileges to users who don't have a significant trust within the organization. Here is a shiny illustration about how to think about role and tasks. So consider Exchange admin role. There are a few sample tasks that come along that are tied to that specific role. So mailbox restore, mailbox search, journal rule, etc. So when you give someone access to Exchange admin role, they get access to all these tasks that come that are associated with that role. Task level scoping is really assigning permission to a single task to the user. So if I am a person if I'm an admin assistant, I just have to create a journaling rule for the executive I'm managing. I can request access just for that and go ahead and do that instead of getting Exchange admin access. So with that, we'll do a quick walkthrough of how you can use these customizable access control capabilities in Office 365 to reach a better security posture. And we will start with traditional RBAC, and from there we'll show how you can keep on adding extra controls to ensure that access in your organization is highly secure. So traditional RBAC, this is Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Traditional RBAC allows you to create users, assign them specific role. So here you can manage roles for users. As you can see, Candy here, she's Exchange administrator, and Jason has global admin permissions. And I would like you to remember Jason because we will take his example throughout this. Jason and Candy will take their example throughout this demonstration to show additional controls that can be applied. So this is what we term as standing access. These users who are assigned a specific role, so Jason and Candy, if they are assigned global admin and Exchange admin role respectively, they have this role assigned to them forever. All the permissions that exist with these roles, they apply to them forever, unless someone goes and modifies it. So our first step is to enable just-in-time access to these roles. So that's our higher security posture. Instead of giving them standing access to a specific role, we will now give them just-in-time access to that role. So we are going to use Azure AD PIM to make that assignment. So this is Azure AD PIM portal where I can go ahead and manage all the directory roles. If I see the members who are assigned any directory role in Azure AD, I could see the list of all the administrators that exist. And Jason here, we can see that Jason has global admin permissions. So my first step is I'm going to make Jason eligible, which is a fancy way to say that I'm going to remove global admin permissions from Jason and tell him that whenever he needs that, he can go ahead and request for it just in time. So once he's made eligible, if we go back to the RBAC page, we can see that Jason now effectively is a normal user and does not have any global admin permissions. But what the previous step did was store the information of Jason in one of our databases saying that, okay, Jason is one person who is eligible to request for just-in-time access to global admin. Now, this is important because we don't want all our users to go ahead and request for global admin permissions. We only want people who are assigned to go ahead and request for them. So now as Jason, I can go back to PIM portal, I can see what my roles are, and I can see that I have a global admin role, but which is not active, which means to say I am a normal user, but I am eligible to request for a global admin role. So I can go ahead and activate, and while activating, I can specify the duration for which I need access for, I can specify a reason, and then activate the role. Once the activation is complete, you can see that I have access now valid till July 15, 3:11 a.m., which basically is to say that now I am a global admin, but because I requested just-in-time access for a set duration, my access will be valid only till a specific time, and it will just go away once that time duration is gone. And now for all practical purposes, I am a global admin till my access has not expired. Now that is step one, enabling the concept of JIT in the organization. Now this is step two, wherein not just JIT, you enable the concept of JIA, where it's just enough access. So you request for exactly what you need, and you get permissions of exactly what you need to perform your job and no more than that. So we'll take a look at one of the examples of how Office 365 PAM will enable us to do that. We'll go through the setup experience. We go to security and privacy under settings, and there is a tile for privileged access. We turn it on, we specify an approver group. Now, approver group is a set of people who are there to make decision on whether person A gets access to or not, in that case, Jason. Once it is activated, I can go ahead and configure policy. In this specific case, we were talking about journal rule. So I'm giving an example of how we can create a policy for journal rule. So I have selected task, I have selected exchange, journaling rule, and specified that approvals for requests for journaling rule have to be manually approved. And privileged access approver is the approver group. So all the people who are part of this security group will be able to receive notification and go ahead and approve this, such requests. So once policy is created, this is what happens. So I am logged in with Candy's account here, and I tried to set journaling rule for Jason. However, you can see that I am getting an error. Because that policy was created before, it not only enables users to request scoped access, it also prevents access from people who already have enough permissions. So in a way, task level access scoping work both ways. It works as a security mechanism for really sensitive tasks that you consider within your organization. And on the flip side, it can allow users to request really scoped access to that task as well. So now, even as an Exchange admin, I'm not able to execute that. And I have to request permission to go ahead and do that. So I am going ahead and requesting more permission for that. So I am requesting journaling rule. I specify the duration, I specify a reason, and then make a request. When that request is made, an email is triggered. It is sent to the administrators to approve. It has details of what the request is, why it is required, and they can come back to Admin Center. They can see the request. They can see the details of the request here as well, and they can make a decision. Once approved, the engineer the administrator who made the request receives the notification saying that, okay, your request has been approved, and now you can go ahead and access what you needed to. And once that is done, I can go ahead and create a journaling rule because now I have permissions. And again, I requested for 2 hours of access to journaling rule task. Once 2 hours is gone, my permissions will be gone as well. So it behaves, it is truly just in time. So when I need, I get access, and when it is done, the access is gone. And then we have a chance to review audit logs. So everything, the request, the approval, the actions that, subsequent actions that they were performed by the engineer, the administrator, they're all logged and available for audit. Again, now when we talk about PAM, how many here have heard about other existing PAM systems? Okay, few of you. So PAM, Privileged Access Management, is a standard product that is offered by multiple vendors today. However, from the perspective of Microsoft Cloud, we have a significant advantage compared to other vendors who provide PAM solution for Office 365. And these are I'll touch upon 4 major reasons. One is standing access. All other PAM tools, they utilize a service account, which users can go check in, check out, and to manage, Microsoft Cloud. Now, in that case, those service accounts, although I as an individual user don't have access to service accounts all the time, but those service accounts, they have standing permissions in Microsoft Cloud. So if those accounts are compromised, it is equal to compromising a user's account who has standing access. So all the bets are off. Lack of granular access control. Now, because Microsoft Cloud knows about what tasks are, how the access enforcement happens in all the services, only we are uniquely positioned to offer granular access control. So because from outside Microsoft Cloud, all the PAM systems, the only thing that they see is roles. So they can only allow access which are scoped to roles and not granular to a single task level. They cannot protect any task. They cannot grant scoped access to task as well. Then access enforcement. Now, when you think of access enforcement, the access enforcement is happening at the PAM system. So I, as Abhishek, am getting an access to managing Exchange or not. That decision is really being made in the PAM system. And if the PAM system is compromised, Microsoft Cloud really does not understand the difference between John and Abhishek who are coming to manage Exchange system, because they will be coming with the same service account. So access enforcement is really non-existent in Microsoft Cloud if for user A and user B, if they are coming from an external PAM system. And then lack of clear auditing. If we are using external PAM system with the same account, auditing really is tricky because it has to correlate audit logs from Microsoft Cloud, from the PAM system, and many other systems together to bring a clear picture of who did what and when. Because Microsoft Cloud really just sees one single service account for all the users who are there who are using that account. All the audit logs that are generated in Microsoft Cloud, they are tied to one single account. So it is really hard to make a distinguish between user A or user B who performed these access. So Microsoft Cloud PAM, they are really the comprehensive PAM solution that you can get for the Microsoft Cloud. So of privileged access management and privileged identity management really enable you to manage Microsoft Cloud with just-in-time access that is really scoped down and tied with an approval workflow that can enable you to meet all the compliance controls that exist. Not all, but some of the compliance controls around privileged access that exists today from multiple regulators. I'm almost towards the end of the talk. Next step is give it a try. Give Compliance Manager a try. Give PAM a try. You can go to AKAMS Compliance Manager to, if you have an AAD account, if you have a subscription, you can use Compliance Manager today to get more details. You can download the white paper for Compliance Manager to truly understand how we enable and what controls we satisfy and how you can further enable other controls in the organization to meet your compliance requirements. For PAM, you can read our white paper, Zero Standing Access, which really talks about the concept of zero standing access and how you can use our technology to enable zero standing access for your organization. You can see the documentation. This was released last year. We have had significant customer feedback, and we are iterating and creating new features as we speak. With that, thank you very much for coming to this talk. I finished 5 minutes early, so I have some time for questions if you have. Yes, sir.
These are all E5 features. Does everybody in your organization need to have an E5 permanently to assign that, or can you be cost optimizing? Because not everybody wants to.
So the question is whether these features are E5 only or not. So I would like to clarify, are you asking for Compliance Manager or are you asking for PAM and PIM? Okay, so Compliance Manager, as I said, is available to all organizations. PAM is part of E5 and Advanced Compliance SKUs. PIM comes with a different license, which is part of Azure AD Premium P2 license. To get the comprehensive, let's say if you really are an Office 365 organization and you really you're good with RBAC and you really want to enable JIT for Office 365 tasks, PAM should be enough. But if you really want to go that extra mile to make sure that you have JIT access to all the directory roles, then a combination of PIM and PAM is recommended. To the question of users, PIM is admins only. So you can assign licenses to administrators who want JIT access. PAM is basically, because it allows scoped access to commands and users, it is required for all the users in the organization. Yes, sir.
So, if I understood correctly, the PAM solution is focused on Office 365 only. Are your plans to extend this towards other Azure services, IaaS, PaaS services, and potentially beyond just Microsoft solutions? Is the goal that this will be a general PAM solution as an organization, or will it stay focused on Office 365?
Yeah, so the question is, what is the plan for PAM to extend it beyond Office 365 to other Microsoft cloud offerings? And the answer is there is a plan. The goal, as you rightly pointed out, the goal is to make this the PAM system for Microsoft to support JIT and GIA capabilities across all Microsoft cloud offerings. We don't have, unfortunately, a roadmap or fixed date on when those things are getting done. We are working on enabling more workloads and more scenarios through PAM. So details, I would just request to stay plugged in, and the details we'll be sharing soon as we have the dates ready to share.
This potentially would mean that if I would develop an application myself on Azure, I could use PAM to kind of manage my own application.
The question is, if you are a third-party developer, will you get access to PAM solutions? Short answer is yes. It does not exist today. We want to do it. And there are some things happening. I don't, unfortunately, have a date to share. But yes, our goal is to get to a point where third-party applications can integrate with our systems to enable similar PAM functionalities. Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming in today then. I will not hold you up later than this, so you can go ahead and enjoy your lunch. Thank you so much for coming.